Hello, everyone. This is the Mind of Lilith, and thank you for joining me for today's astrological analysis of Wendy Williams' natal chart. Today, I'll be discussing some of the aspects that indicate mental illness, as well as addiction and other health challenges that Wendy suffers from. According to Astrological, Wendy was born on July 18th, 1964 at 9:30 p.m. in Monmouth, New Jersey. And based on the equal house system, she has the sun at 26 degrees of Cancer in the 6th house of work and health. Her sense of purpose comes from having a structured lifestyle or daily routine. She emotionally identifies with her work. It makes her feel good about herself. Her moon is in its fall at 25 degrees of Scorpio on the midheaven, which means that she finds comfort in emotionally intense and transformative experiences. She thrives in precarious or dangerous situations, which partially explains her profession as a shock jock and her attraction to dangerous street guys. She's also emotionally invested in her success, her accomplishments, her career, and her social status, because that's the way her parents, in particular her mother, raised her. Wendy's ascendant is at 19 degrees of Aquarius, and we can see this with her outgoing, friendly, and gregarious personality. She also has Chiron and Saturn retrograde in Pisces in the 1st house, which is very important for her story. Pisces rules prisons, hospitals, addictions, self-sabotage, suicide, insane asylums, closed-off spaces, and isolation. Saturn also rules isolation, imprisonment, and long illnesses. So we can see the potential of Wendy being institutionalized for physical, mental health issues or addictions to alcohol with Saturn and Pisces in the 1st house. I think she went to rehab several times throughout her life. Wendy has Mercury and Leo in the 6th house of work and health. Like Cat Williams, Wendy speaks from the heart without concern for how the truth may affect other people. She's quite brave and stands on whatever she says. In fact, she considers it an act of cowardice to mute or censor herself for others, which is why she had so many controversial interviews during her career. Wendy also has a Venus conjunct Mars and a North Node in Gemini. She has Jupiter opposite the Moon in Taurus, which I'll discuss more in depth in the health portion of this reading. And she has Uranus conjunct Pluto in Virgo in her 7th house, which I'll also discuss later in this reading. So let's discuss health a little bit. In astrology, every planet has an effect on health or the physical appearance, but most notably, health and physical appearance can be identified by aspects to Saturn and Mars. And it shows us, these planets shows us where there are injuries to the physical body. And with Saturn in the 1st house, whatever physical, mental, or spiritual illnesses that Wendy suffers from will affect her physical appearance, the way she looks, and thus her relationship, right? Because if you look deformed or you look sickly, then people will not want to interact with you or engage with you, or they'll change the way that they relate to you based on your physical appearance. So Saturn's influence is reductive, depressive, heavy, separative, dense, and isolating, especially in the sign of Pisces, the 12th house, or any of the angular houses. Pisces is a sign of addictions, morals and beliefs, spirituality, and it rules the feet and the lymphatic system. With Saturn in Pisces in the 1st house, we can see how Wendy's addiction to alcohol may have caused her lymphedema, affecting her feet. Wendy also has Chiron in Pisces, which I also believe contributes to lymphedema. I think Kevin Samuels had Chiron in Pisces as well, and he suffered from lymphoma as a college student. And lymphoma is a form of cancer. So Saturn in Pisces can harden the skin on the feet or cause foot deformities. And I think Wendy said that she had bunions removed from her feet at some point in her life. On another note, Wendy's illnesses affected her eyes as well. Even though the eyes are ruled by the sun and moon, Pisces are known for their eyes. Water signs in general are known for their big watery eyes. Whether it's the shape or the color, Pisces are known for having really beautiful eyes. And so Wendy's grave disease did affect her eyes as well. It made her eyes much larger than normal. So grave disease affects the thyroid and is caused by hyperthyroidism that turns into hypothyroidism. In astrology, the hormones are ruled by the moon in general. Wendy is a Cancer sun, which is ruled by the moon, and her moon is in its fall in Scorpio, which rules the reproductive organs. Her weak moon is being opposed by Jupiter in Taurus. Taurus rules the tongue, the neck, and the thyroid, and also the mouth. Jupiter increases or expands whatever it aspects. So Jupiter in Taurus can indicate an increase in thyroid hormones. This hormonal imbalance is exacerbated by the moon opposition, Jupiter moon opposition, which I also believe is one of the factors that contributes to Wendy's mood swings. I think that her having the moon Neptune conjunction also contributes to her mood swings. So let's get into Wendy's insecurities and poor self-image. As I stated earlier, Wendy has Saturn and Chiron in the first house. Chiron in the first can make someone feel insecure about their appearance or some other aspect of their personality because they were judged or criticized harshly for the way they looked or they behaved. For Wendy, she said that her parents put her on a very strict diet because she was taller and bigger than normal for her age. So she was being punished for something that was beyond her control. That is Chiron and Pisces, okay? So for Wendy, her insecurities are being amplified by the Pluto and Virgo opposition in her 7th house of marriage, business partners, and open enemies. Kevin Hunter has a sun in Virgo. So in essence, he's the physical embodiment of Wendy's deepest desires, but also her deepest fears and insecurity. Now, some of the members of the audience told me that Sharina Hudson, Kevin's long-term mistress, has a sun in Pisces. So that means that Sharina's sun, her very identity, her existence, is in conjunction with Wendy's Chiron in her first house, if that's true. So this dynamic with Kevin Hunter and Sharina Hudson and Wendy Williams more than likely is a past life situation that has come back for healing and resolution. Wendy's Saturn is retrograde in the first house. And a lot of natives who have Saturn retrograde in the first house or even Saturn in the first house, in past lives, they may have committed suicide. And as a result of the suicide, they did not have the opportunity to heal from whatever trauma caused them to have such low self-worth that they were willing to kill themselves instead of fighting through whatever pain they had to, heal their trauma. And so Sharina and Kevin, I believe, came back from a previous lifetime to force Wendy to deal with the pain of whatever insecurities, self-hatred, and self-loathing that Wendy carried from her in a previous lifetime. Wendy has Pluto in the 7th house, which is similar to having Pluto in Libra. People with Pluto and Libra in the 7th house or in the 7th house, they've spent many lifetimes seeking validation from other people, from their spouses, from their friends, from their business partners. Libra is a sign of relationships, and sometimes Librans will sacrifice their own happiness to maintain a relationship with someone who's not compatible with them. So they'll compromise themselves into misery or self-destruction. And so for multiple lifetimes, because Pluto is here, Wendy has spent multiple lifetimes being someone who needed validation from her partner. And in a previous lifetime, the betrayal of her partner was so devastating to her that it caused her to take herself out. And unfortunately, she was at risk of repeating the same mistake in this lifetime. During a documentary, they stated that Wendy was found in her room unresponsive and she could have died of alcohol poisoning. We can see the effect of Wendy's, substance abuse issues and her addictions on her physical body. She looks like death. And I don't mean to be harsh when I say that, but she looks like she's throwing herself away. She looks like Whitney Houston. She looks like Michael Jackson, all three of which suffered from severe substance abuse and addiction. And it affected their physical appearance. Michael Jackson at Pisces on the ascendant, Whitney Houston at Pisces in the first house, and so did Wendy Williams. Pisces in the first house, addictions that affect your physical appearance. You look like you're trying to destroy yourself. You look like you're trying to escape from your body by destroying it. So yeah, Kevin Hunter, her husband, ex-husband, has a sun in Virgo. So in essence, he's the physical embodiment of Wendy's deepest desires, but also her deepest fears and insecurities. Pluto is the planet of transformation, but it's also the planet of horror and compulsion, what we're afraid of on a visceral and an instinctual level. The pain of experiencing what we are most afraid of facilitates the evolution and transformation process. Pluto has a magnetizing influence. So although we're afraid of whatever significations represent the sign and the house that Pluto is in, at some point we will meet someone who will force us to go through the experience to purge, heal, and grow. With Pluto conjunct Uranus in the 7th house, Wendy's marriages were destined to be filled with drama, chaos, instability, turmoil, pain, and betrayal. But these situations were meant to help her to become more logical, independent, and rational and to learn how to love and value herself. Individuals with Pluto and Leo or in the seventh house have to learn how to create and maintain balance in their relationships without sacrificing their self-worth, without sacrificing their identity and their peace of mind. Unfortunately, with Saturn and Pisces in the first house, there's a very strong possibility that Wendy erased herself in the past life. She threw herself away. And with Pluto in the seventh house, it was probably because of a lover that she was devoted to at the expense of her own sanity and her own well-being. Saturn in the angular houses can cause an emaciated appearance or grotesquely obese appearance, both of which are indicative of physical, mental, or emotional sicknesses that impacts our day-to-day activity and the way that other people see us. So Saturn in the first house is forcing Winnie to deal with the pain of separation, loneliness, and rejection without destroying herself over it. This is a very difficult placement because the native never feels like they belong anywhere. They never feel wanted or appreciated. They're very judgmental or critical of themselves, and they blame themselves for things that aren't their fault. They feel responsible for other people. And so many times these natives get taken advantage of by people who they've known in a past life. Saturn in the first house natives may be ridiculed, judged, or ostracized for their personality or their appearance as well. So Wendy has two challenging planetary bodies or elements in her first house. Okay. Her childhood experiences made her feel very insecure about her self-worth and her appearance. And because Pisces is involved, she's hypersensitive to the point of self-pity, self-sabotage, and also self-abuse. A lot of individuals with Pisces in the first house will hurt themselves for attention or for pity. This hypersensitivity that Wendy has is baggage from a past life, especially if she committed suicide before she got the chance to heal from her trauma. If you die in trauma, you'll be reborn with the same trauma. That is why our ancestors had rituals to prepare us for death and the journey after death. But once our enemies took over, they made sure that we died in violence and anguish and despair so that we will be reborn with the same energetic baggage that attracts more trauma and dysfunction in future lifetimes. This was done intentionally to perpetuate the reincarnation loop. The Black community and indigenous communities in general need to have mass burial rituals integrated into the culture to help disembodied spirits that didn't die peacefully and they're stuck in limbo in bardos. Because for the past several centuries, we've had industrialized, wholesale, massive genocide, war, grief, murder, slavery. Instead of celebrating Halloween, we really need to take that holiday and that time, November 1st, October 31st, to help release spirits from the bardo, from being disembodied in the lunar node. And I'll get into that some other point. So now let's get into Wendy's mental illness and addictions. Before I looked at Wendy's chart, I knew that she would have an afflicted moon and or Mercury. The moon governs our emotional body, and Mercury rules over the way we assimilate and process information. Wendy has the moon in its fall in Scorpio, conjunct Neptune, opposite Jupiter. These two planets are acting as malefics because the moon is in its fall, okay? Neptune and Jupiter are acting as malefics against the moon, in my opinion. And this is a very challenging aspect to navigate because the native loses all emotional control with the moon conjunct Neptune opposing Jupiter. The highs are to the stratosphere and the lows are all the way in the pits of hell. There is no balance. There is no regulation here. It's a constant loop of unregulated emotions that are only stabilized by work or the influence of Saturn because both Neptune and Jupiter rule Pisces, the sign in which Saturn is in. So Saturn's heavy, dense, and stabilizing influence actually helped Winnie to transmute and channel her emotional dysregulation into her personality. It's like putting a paperweight on a helium balloon. Wendy turned her mental illness or mental imbalance into a career, and she became a Black, successful female shock jock. What people consider entertainment was actually Wendy self-medicating through gossip and through getting involved in very intense situations. This Moon-Neptune conjunction kind of supports my belief that Wendy, deleted herself in a past life in a fit of this, and while she was in despair and anguish, she was in an immense amount of pain. And so when she transitioned, I think that, well, I do for a fact, I don't even think, I really believe that the energetic implant of that trauma, of that pain that she went through, it followed her in this lifetime, and it's still causing her to have these mood swings based on stuff that happened in prior lifetimes. Neptune, baggage from previous incarnations, Neptune and Pluto. And Saturn retrograde. So yeah, she's trying, in this lifetime, she's trying to heal whatever energetic trauma that she endured that caused her to delete herself in a past life. That's going to be very hard to do because when you reincarnate, the energy becomes more concentrated. So now the pain becomes more shrill. It becomes more agitating. It's more painful. It's deeper. It hurts even worse. And so, yeah, Wendy was destined to repeat the same cycle with Kevin and Shireen or whoever else because she never resolved the issues that caused her to get rid of herself in a past life. And so, even though Saturn in Pisces and the Ascendant is very difficult to deal with, it actually was Wendy's saving grace, in my opinion, because, Saturn gave Wendy a sense of purpose and it also gave her discipline through her work. Without work, Wendy doesn't know who she is because she is the work. She's the brand. She's the product. So right now, without having a job or a career or her show or her family, she's absolutely lost and flailing, which usually happens to Pisces first house natives at some point in their lives. We saw this with Whitney Houston. We saw this with Michael Jackson and now Wendy. At some point, natives with Pisces on the ascendant look like the pain of their addictions. A lot of them end up losing a whole lot of weight. They look emaciated because they're not feeding themselves. It's like they ignore or they destroy their physical bodies in an effort to escape the pain of their lives, which are usually self-inflicted or facilitated by exploitative and dysfunctional relationships to which they're bound to by their beliefs about themselves. So it's like Saturn in the first house, they almost forget their bodies exist. So they ignore their bodies physically. They don't eat. They don't take care of themselves sometimes. And so it's like a way for them to escape the mortal coil of incarnation, the pain of, being trapped into a physical vessel that is causing a lot of turmoil. That is the reason why they're feeling all of these negative emotions. So if I don't have a body, I can't feel this pain. If I don't exist, if I'm not born, if I'm not here, then I don't have to go through this, these devastating emotions. And so, a lot of Piscean ascendants attract people who want to trap, imprison, bind, or exploit them in some way at some point in their lives. Not only are they crucified by other people, they're crucified by their own conscience and what they did to themselves while they hated themselves. They're also crucified by what they allowed others to do to them or what they've done to others in allegiance to a person or an ideology that ultimately betrayed them. This is like Whitney Houston being so loyal to Bobby Brown that she sabotaged her own career and even her own relationship with her daughter. And it was all for naught because Bobby Brown never appreciated her and he never stopped cheating. The same thing with Wendy Williams. Wendy Williams made so many sacrifices for her family, for her husband. She leveled him up. She gave him a career. She gave him money and prestige. And what did he do? He ends up having a decades-long affair and having a baby on her. No appreciation for her whatsoever. And so, Piscean natives, they have to learn how to establish boundaries and to stop sacrificing themselves for other people's benefit, their comfort, or their enrichment, because these people do not appreciate you. They can't. They're not going to. It's never going to happen. As for a Pisces native, for a Gemini native, they may get what they want. Sagittarius, maybe even so. But Pisces, no. You're here to let go of the expectations of ego fulfillment, which is appreciation, acknowledgement. You're not going to get that. Or if you do get it, you won't appreciate it or you won't feel it anyway. You will feel like you don't deserve it. You're not worthy of it. That's one of the lessons of Pisces. So I'm going to get into that at some other point on this channel. But back to Wendy. Wendy has a moon in Scorpio, and moon in Scorpio natives can sometimes be addicted to emotionally intense and dramatic situations that are not necessarily conducive to harmony and peace. Wendy's weak moon makes a conjunction with Neptune, which in this case makes Neptune a malefic influence. Neptune is a planet of extremes, extreme highs, extreme lows, and there's rarely, if ever, any balance because Neptune dissolves, disintegrates, and merges. There is no separation or distinction to facilitate balance. Now, even though Jupiter and Neptune are considered to be sister planets in the sense that they both rule Pisces and they both deal with optimism and beliefs and ideology, unlike Jupiter, I don't think that Neptune has an amplifying influence. I think that Neptune gives the illusion of amplification, but in actuality, it just increases the surface area of that which is destroying, right? As an example, Jesus fed the flock with 2 fish and 6 loaves of bread. 2 fish representing Pisces. The quantity of fish did not increase. The fish were broken up in pieces evenly among the flock of people. Just because everybody got their share of fish doesn't mean that there were more fish. The fish was dissolved, cut up, disintegrated, and destroyed in order to feed a multitude of people. So the quantity of fish did not increase, but the surface area of the fish increased by cutting it up in small pieces. And this is the illusion of Pisces, right? Things seem like more than what they are. If you have a crush on a guy and he gives you a card for Valentine's Day, he didn't ask you to go steady. He didn't ask you to marry him. Just gave you a card. You have a crush on him. Neptune will make you believe that that simple Valentine's Day card that costs $2, it means that he's in love with you too. He has the same feelings for you. It does not necessarily mean that. It may just mean that the guy wanted to give you a Valentine's Day card because he thinks you're cute and that's it. Doesn't mean he wants to marry you and have a family with you. Neptune will make you believe that that one card that the person gives you is a marriage proposal, right? That one card has a certain value or a certain valuation or a certain quantity. It's just one little card, right? It's not 15 cards. It's not a wedding ring. It's only worth $2. But Neptune will make something appear to be more valuable or more significant or bigger than what it actually is. And it's a fallacy. Jupiter actually will increase the value of something. Jupiter will open the door for opportunities. So even though this card is not a marriage proposal, now maybe you guys can go steady. There's an opportunity for the relationship to develop further and amplify in significance. Neptune gives the illusion that something is more than what it actually is. So in this case, Neptune made Wendy have very delusional emotions or feeling. Like she did not see things for what they were. Reactions and her responses to situations were based on what she would hope would happen. I hope that my husband will stop cheating on me after 15 years of an affair. I hope that in spite of my health challenges and my ghastly appearances, I'll be able to get another man while I'm in the throes of depression and addiction and mental illness. Hopefully, right? Now, the moon conjunct Neptune isn't all bad because Wendy had a lot of faith and belief in herself. Remember, the moon is her sun sign's ruler. So this gave her, I'm not going to say unrealistic, a very idealistic and optimistic or hopeful or wishful belief in herself and her career, right? Because the moon is in the 10th house where the midheaven is. So this is like a gift and a curse. If Wendy was not as, I'm going to say delusional, if Wendy was not as hopeful, because there was nobody who did what she did before her. She's the first, I think, black female radio personality to be in the Radio Hall of Fame. She has a star on a Walk of Fame. Like, she had to be a trailblazer. She had to believe in herself, Neptune, to the point where, even if it hadn't been done before her, she was going to be the first to do it. So Neptune and Jupiter both worked in her favor, and it gave her the utmost belief in herself. This is who I am. This is who I'm meant to be. I'm here for this purpose. Nothing's going to stop me from believing in myself. But then on her bad days, it goes the other way. If Wendy on a bad day says, I am ugly, I'm worthless, nobody loves me, my husband replaced me, she can go right to hell with that. Like, she'll go into the pits of the most self-loathing, self-deprecating, self-hating inner dialogue that will cause her to want to hurt herself and get rid of herself because she'll actually believe it and the pain that comes along with those beliefs. So the beliefs are eliciting negative emotions, the moon, that are not based in reality, Neptune. They're based on how she feels about herself, based on past life baggage and karma that she never resolved. And also childhood stuff from her mother, because the moon is the mother. And, there are some things that her mother did, her parents did towards her as a child that affected her self-esteem. And it was kind of repeating that same inner dialogue. So yeah, Neptune is a planet of extremes, extreme highs and extreme lows. There's rarely, if ever, any balance because Neptune dissolves, disintegrates, and it merges. There's no separation or distinction to facilitate balance. Wendy was her career. She embodied her accomplishments. She embodied her successes. That's what made her feel important, loved, and valued as a human being. I think she also did get the approval and acceptance of her parents as well. She wanted to make her parents proud. That's why she bought her parents a condo before she turned 30 years old. She was proud to take care of her parents. And so that meant that she was successful. She was accomplished. And that's the moon and Neptune and Jupiter. So we have the moon, which governs emotions and hormones, forming a conjunction with Neptune, the planet of surrender, and it is in opposition with Jupiter, the planet of growth and expansion. I would not be surprised if Wendy's moods were out of balance, not just because of the addiction, Neptune and Jupiter are both planets of addiction, but because of her hormones. The chicken came before the egg, or the egg came before the chicken. Wendy was self-medicating her hormonal imbalance with the alcohol and the drugs, the cocaine and the alcohol and the weed or whatever, right? So she had to find a way to calm those really strong, powerful, yet erratic and imbalanced feeling down so she could function. Now, the good news is that Jupiter is in Taurus, the sign of the moon's exaltation. So, with this opposition, there's a translation or transference of energy from Jupiter to the moon. So, Wendy was still able to create opportunities, success, and wealth in spite of her mental, emotional, and physical health challenges. She's actually quite fortunate in that regard. With Jupiter and Neptune aspecting the moon, she had a lot of support from her parents and her ancestors. She was very protected to that extent. And I think that's why she's still alive to this day. So Wendy has a weak moon square Mercury in Leo. The way she thinks about herself is breaking her own heart. When Wendy is emotionally triggered, she loses all logic and perspective and uses drugs and alcohol to quiet the noise or to numb the pain of her own despair, which is anchored in self-loathing, self-deprecation, and self-flagellation. Like she's punishing herself on purpose, punishing herself for not being perfect, not being good enough, not being pretty enough, right? Being criticized, not being whatever other people want her to be in order for them to respect her. She really believes the thoughts that pop into her head about her worth. So on a good day, she's ready to take on the world. But on a bad day, she's ready to crash and destroy herself with some intense experience that's facilitated by drugs or sex. The more intense or dangerous or extreme, the better, because the adrenaline rush helps Wendy to escape her self-imposed misery. On the surface, this gives her a very fun, exuberant, exciting, daredevil, and sexy personality. But behind the curtain, she's constantly judging and punishing herself for her perceived inadequacies. The moon conjunct Neptune gives Wendy cloudy or confused emotions. It's very sensitive, empathetic, intuitive, and psychic. She has a grand water trine that includes Saturn, the moon, and her sun. So she's somebody who feels very deeply, who believes in what she feels, which gives her very subjective reasoning. And that's never good when you're dealing with people with mental issues and addiction problems, okay? Now on to Wendy's career aspirations. Wendy has Mercury in Leo in the 6th house, which gives her an anxious, maybe anal retentive and almost nagging or perfectionist temperament. She speaks from her heart honestly and proudly, and she says it like she means it. However, she also has Mars in Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury. Her words can be cutting, harsh, separative, destructive, brash, and painful. Mercury in the 6th is someone who thinks about work all the time, and the energy of Venus and Mars is being translated or transferred to the 6th house because that's where the dispositor is. And fortunately for Wendy, the 6th house is where Mars is most productive. It loves to be here. So Wendy loves gossip, talking smack, telling stories. She was born to do this. She's an excellent storyteller. Wendy's moon-ruled sun and Mercury in the 6th house can be considered major contributors to her workhorse mentality. She uses her quick wit with Mars in Gemini, her flirtatious charm with Venus in Gemini, and her communication skills with Mercury in the 6th house in Leo to earn a living. However, Mercury in Leo is being afflicted by both the square to the moon and Neptune in Scorpio, especially Neptune, and Jupiter in Taurus. So Wendy's thinking and communication is being afflicted by the planets of addiction, expansion, freedom, opportunity, and release. It is safe to say that this aspect, this T-square between Mercury, Neptune, Jupiter, and the moon, made Wendy not only loose at the mouth, she was very verbose, loquacious, talkative, and not really concerned about how her words affect other people, but it also caused her to have mental imbalances. She was mentally unstable with this aspect. According to Wendy, now with Mercury and Leo, how are you speaking from the heart if you're constantly filtering and censoring yourself for other people? And this lack of inhibition, Mercury square Jupiter, Mercury square Neptune, actually created more opportunities for her, as Jupiter aspects tend to do. But opportunities at what cost? Wendy felt like she was doing the right thing because she was becoming more successful, even if she was being malicious at times, which I think was because of the Mars in Gemini placement and her moon in Scorpio. Moon in Scorpio natives can be emotionally abusive or manipulative, and the inconjunction between the moon and Mars made her testy and dissatisfied, and thus verbally abusive as a result. And we saw this during the documentary. I don't think that Wendy's dementia and her depression is the reason why she's so snarky and testy with people. I think she's always that way. So because of Wendy's upbringing and her insecurities, it's as if she felt safe hurting other people's feelings because that was her way of protecting her own feelings by being on the offensive, as many cancers are known to do when they don't feel safe. Almost like being a bully, like 50 Cent, which would make sense if you have deep insecurities about yourself. Natives with moon quincunx or in conjunct Mars find it difficult to relax. They may be persnickety, picky, or nagging and difficult to please. And we saw some of this attitude in the documentary. This personality trait may have also been inherited from her mother. who seems to be someone who had very high expectations for herself and her children. Now, the dispositors of Wendy's first house of personality, Jupiter and Neptune, are making a T square with the planet of communication and thinking, but because these dispositors are mutable in nature, there is less tension. Jupiter and Neptune gives Wendy the ability to transform her weaknesses into her strengths much easier than Saturn, Mars, Mercury, or Saturn, Moon, Mercury, trine, T square would, which I believe is the reason why she became successful at a relatively young age. She always knew what she wanted to do. She was always focused on her goal. It's almost as if she came back from past life with the mission to complete what she had not finished. And so at a young age, she knew she wanted to be a radio personality because she retained those gifts from a past life. So she may have retained gifts and curses or negative imprints from a past life. So there is another significant placement that indicates that Wendy is emotionally invested in her career, fame, and accomplishments. In the comment section, let me know what you think that placement is. Now let's get into relationships. Wendy has Venus conjunct Mars and the North Node in Gemini, which explains her quick and incisive wit and her flirtatious nature. She's not coy nor shy or prude when it comes to the opposite sex. She has a cavalier or superficial attitude about sex. Uranus conjunct Pluto in Virgo in the 7th house makes Wendy very independent. She's actually comfortable in less traditional relationships, which gives her a lot of freedom to be who she really is. Her relationship partners are also unorthodox or unusual in some way. Wendy's attracted to people who come from different socioeconomic cultures or classes than she grew up in. She was raised in the suburbs, and she's attracted to hip-hop hood guys. Wendy's marriage was very Uranian. She was the boss and the breadwinner, and her husband worked for her. To mitigate the loss of the traditional gender roles, she gave her husband more power than he deserved, Pluto in the 7th house, just so he can feel like a man. And this is one of the reasons why he cheated with a woman who had nothing going for her. He felt emasculated by Wendy's power, success, intellect, and money, so Sharina made him feel better about himself. Now, if Kevin had such a problem with the power dynamic between him and Wendy's relationship, he should have divorced her. But I suspect that Wendy's Pluto in 7th house would not allow Kevin to divorce her. Or Kevin was very possessive of Wendy, not because he loved her, but because of what she had, her possessions, her money, her fame, her status, her clout. Pluto in the 7th, people can attract partners who are using them for what they have, who are very manipulative, who are very obsessive and compulsive and abusive. All they're concerned about is maintaining control over their supply. Okay? Pluto in the 7th house natives attract narcissists, just like Venus, Pluto conjunct square or opposition to Pluto natives attract narcissists too. So Pluto and the 7th house natives can be very possessive of their partners. They feel like their relationships are a life or death issue. If not a physical death, the death of the ego identity. This is like completely stripping your soul down to nothing to prove your love and your loyalty, usually to someone who doesn't deserve it. Otherwise, you wouldn't have to go that far in the first place. With Uranus conjunct Pluto in the 7th house, something sudden, unexpected, or shocking forced Wendy to finally transform her ideas about relationship dynamics in order to heal. In summary, Wendy's current health issues can be mapped to the following aspects. Saturn, which is her chart ruler, in the 1st house in Pisces conjunct Chiron. Pisces governs the feet and the lymphatic system, and it's also the sign of addiction. So we can see that Wendy's addictions are punishing her physical body, mainly her feet, the skin of her feet, and her lymphatic system. Her thyroid issues can be attributed to her moon, which governs the hormones in this fall, opposite Jupiter and Taurus. I would also go so far as to say that I think that the sun is in its fall or is in detriment in Cancer because it rules the moon. So she has a weak sun, and her sun sign's ruler is in a weak position. Wendy's thyroid issues can be attributed to her moon, which governs the hormones in its fall, opposite Jupiter and Taurus, which rules the thyroid. This can increase and then decrease thyroid hormone production, causing weight gain, weight problems, fatigue, depression, and also giantism or extreme height or bulging eyes. I think Wendy is taller than her siblings and her parents. I have the moon in Taurus square Jupiter. I've suffered from hypothyroidism intermittently throughout my life. So moon and Scorpio opposite Jupiter people can cause extremely positive or negative moods, but both are very intense. Wendy has Mercury at square Jupiter and Neptune. This is a T square with Jupiter, Neptune, and Mercury. And this is very challenging because Neptune and Jupiter rule the signs that are in detriment or in debilitation in Mercury, which is Sagittarius and Pisces. This can cause someone to have lack of focus, a lack of concentration or perspective or rationality. This is a loss of linear thinking. This is loss of memory even, because Mercury doesn't deal with the memory, and so does the moon. So there's a T-square with the moon, Mercury, Jupiter, and Neptune. And planets that are either debilitated or are aspecting planets that rule signs in their debilitation. So this aspect initially made Wendy an exceptional communicator because she has free access, Jupiter, to lots of words. Jupiter. Both her parents, I think, are educators. She's creative. She's very confident when she speaks. Unfortunately, the Saturn Aquarius transit from 2020 to 2023 affected her health in a way that took away her words. Remember, she has Aquarius ascendant with Pisces still in the first house. So Saturn conjunct the ascendant is similar to having a Saturn return. The native is rewarded or punished for long-term habits and behavior in ways that are limiting, reductive, painful, and isolating. Wendy had to pay for her lifelong substance abuse by losing the very thing that fed her addictions, her words, and her mind. There's also an in conjunction between Mercury and Saturn. So at some point, Wendy was going to be silenced, muted, or quieted in some way because of a health issue. And again, this health issue was caused by an addiction, which may have been caused by psychological disturbances that were facilitated by a hormonal imbalance. T-square with the moon, Mercury, Neptune, Jupiter, and Saturn and Pisces. Wendy's chart ruler, which is Saturn, is in a sign of addiction and betrayal. And her sun's ruler of the moon is in a T-square with Neptune and Jupiter, the planets of addiction, excess, and a loss of boundaries and structure. If you cannot structure your thoughts, you cannot structure your language. If your emotions are out of alignment, out of whack, it is going to affect your thought patterns as well. And so I think that Wendy's aphasia and her dementia is caused by this Mercury, Neptune, Jupiter, moon square, which was triggered by the Saturn in Aquarius transit, which was squaring her moon, right? And that caused her to lose her family, in a sense, her home, her family, her career even, because the moon is on her midheaven. And so her loss of speech and her cognitive faculties, it was something that was happening for a while because Saturn does deal with time, something that happens over a protracted period of time. But I think the triggering moment was this divorce and also losing her show on top of the divorce. That made things much worse. As a final note, Piscean natives, especially ascendants, have to be careful not to fall into a cycle of self-loathing and self-destruction because at some point you will feel like throwing yourself away. And unfortunately, because we live in a free will universe, you'll be allowed to do so if that's what you want to do. If you want to destroy yourself for whatever reason, you will be allowed to do so. Because in past lives, you were more than likely sacrificed for someone else's benefit, either through slavery, marriage, witchcraft, ritual abuse. But it's easy for you to not see your own value and to give your value away and to throw yourself away as a result because you were never allowed to have agency over your mind, body, and your spirit in previous lifetimes. So what's the difference now? You're going to repeat the same patterns. Wendy is going to need intensive treatment for her hormonal balance. She may need to have her blood cleaned even, I think. The way that Jordan Peterson did. He went to, I think, Russia. He went to Russia to clean out his blood when he was addicted to benzos. She may have to get her blood cleaned completely to help deal with decades of substance abuse issues. All right, guys, thank you for listening. I'm going to leave it there. If you want to order your own tarot reading or astrology reading from me, please visit my website. The link is in the description box. Please allow 2 to 4 weeks for delivery of your reading. I look forward to reading your feedback. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I will speak to you soon.